Welcome to Under the Flat Hat with Chris Burnett and Kevin Heatley. Stories from the front lines of America's public lands and the people who care for them. Honest, unfiltered, and straight from under the hat. You're listening to Under the Flat Hat, a podcast exploring the people, politics, and pressures shaping America's public lands. I'm Chris Burnett, a former National Park Ranger, whiskey distiller, and federal land manager turned attorney. I'm joined by my co-host, a national conservation leader, former National Park superintendent, and an example of why the administration should extend the border wall around New Jersey, Kevin Heatley. Together, we share stories, shine a light on hard truths, and celebrate the resilience of those working behind the scenes. Whether you've worn the flat hat or just care about the future of our parks and public lands, this is your place to listen, learn, and connect. Welcome back to Under the Flat Hat. It's good to have you with us again as we take a clear-eyed look at the people, the systems, and the stories shaping America's public lands. Today we're talking about accessibility and what it really means for families who want to experience these places together. As always, Kevin's with me. Kevin, I'll let you introduce our guest.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm really excited about today's show because we've got an opportunity to talk to Seth Miller, who is the executive director of Oregon Parks Forever. And as you mentioned, we're going to be discussing some of the accessibility issues and some of the interesting opportunities, in particular for mobile tracked vehicles that can be utilized. And the program that Oregon Parks Forever is supporting, which I'm really excited about. I'm on the board. Seth recruited me this year for the board of directors for Oregon Parks Forever. And quite frankly, one of the things that really sold me on the idea of working with that organization was this program called David's Chair. And so, Seth, thanks for being on the show. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to give a little bit of background on what you do at Oregon Parks Forever, and then talk a little bit about the history of David's Chair and how Oregon Parks Forever got involved with David's Chair.
Thanks, Kevin, and Chris, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
As Kevin mentioned, I'm the executive director of Oregon Parks Forever. We are a 30-year-old statewide organization, a nonprofit, that raises money to support the federal, state, county, city, and tribal parks across Oregon. About 7 years ago, we met an organization called David's Chair in Medford, Oregon, and they had 4 of these electric all-terrain track chairs that you had to drive to Medford and borrow to go around the state to if you had any sort of mobility challenge. This is not just people who are already in wheelchairs, but it also could be people who are using scooters or canes or walkers or having balance issues. And I looked at these things and I said, oh my God, these things are incredible. They're life-changing for people with mobility challenges. But wouldn't it be nice if we had them all over the state so that people could use them for free? And their response was, that's also a great idea, but we don't have the money. So Oregon Parks Forever agreed to step in and raise the funds and do the promotion for putting 10 of these along the Oregon coast as a starting point. And I'm really excited that now, 7 years later, with our help, they not only have the ones that we originally put on the coast, but they've also been able to do some fundraising on their own, as well as additional fundraising that we've done. And they now have, I believe the number is 24 of these chairs available
That
across
is
Oregon,
that is great.
as well as having individual chairs in Texas, in Reno, Nevada, in Northern California, and in Washington State.
Oh, I tell you what, when Kevin first told me about this, I was blown away. I love it. I've done a bunch of transportation stuff and accessibility stuff with the National Park Service, and the parks are always looking for things like this. That they can help with accessibility. Now, obviously, there's always issues you run in. Public land managers aren't always the best. Kind of incorporate programming like this into their systems. But when I heard about it, I was like, man, yeah, we need to get this guy on and talk to him a little bit and help push, this type of outreach because it's so needed through all of our public lands and, whether they're state, local, or federal. And, I'm excited not only that you guys are doing this, but I'm excited that you're here to tell us about it.
Thanks. Well, these chairs, they're called Action Track chairs, and they're manufactured in Minnesota. Currently, they are available in a number of states through the state park foundations and the state parks departments. So you can find them in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Colorado, in addition to Oregon. And it just happens that we have partnered up with David's chair and are trying to expand them across the state of Oregon, as well as to help with expanding in the Pacific Northwest.
So now, Seth, this David's chair, there's a backstory to how it originated before Oregon Parks Forever got involved. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to the personal story about who David was and how the organization formed.
Sure. So David Hattrick was an active outdoorsman and hunter, and he was diagnosed with ALS and didn't want to give up his ability to get outdoors. And a number of his friends, led by his friend Steve First, who is a sergeant with the Medford Police Department, agreed to get together and form a nonprofit to raise money in order to buy a single chair for David. They were able to raise enough money to buy that chair, and fortunately, David was able to use that chair for 6 months before he passed. But they also made David a promise that they would keep the nonprofit going and try to raise additional funds and make it available to other people elsewhere. And so they have done that. And I don't know if you guys have a picture that you can show one of these chairs. Basically, it's a wheelchair that has had the wheels removed and replaced with a tank treads, so they can go over all sorts of terrain. One of the places that's popular is to take them out on the beach, but they also can go on trails that have roots and rocks. The chairs have two different types. One is a permanently seated chair, and the other is a chair that will stand people up. The standing chair can actually go into up to 8 inches of water and stand people up. So people who want to go fly fishing can go into the edge of a river and stand up and go fly fishing. I mean, how incredible is that for somebody who's been paralyzed and not been able to stand up, to be able to stand up and go fly fishing? It's just mind-changing.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Mind-blowing.
Yes.
Yeah, this is why I got so excited about this program in Oregon Parks Forever. And obviously, there's issues across the country with accessibility and mobility, and apparently from the CDC, over 12% of American citizens have some kind of serious mobility issue, and the opportunity to be able to bring people out into the outdoors and connect them or reconnect them so that they can have access, as you mentioned, and we'll put some links up, but the idea that and the images of people going down the beach, as you said, standing up, they can stand up, or being able to access some of the fishing spots, or to go duck hunting, or just to bird watching, and be able to get to locations that they previously were unable to access is just spectacular. I mean, it's really exciting, and I'm really, really excited about Oregon Parks Forever's role in this, and that the organization is running with the idea. No pun intended, but it's a super program. And so, Seth, what kind of limitations does the Action Track Chair have in terms of accessibility? Obviously, I think I mentioned to you once before, if I get out on the trail and I see a lot of blowdowns laying across the trail, I have to scramble and try to get underneath or over them or around them. What type of terrain can this vehicle or these vehicles access, and what kind of limitations do they have?
So the limitation really is the bottom of the battery. That's where the 8 inches comes from with going to the river. So it can go into fairly deep sand. It can go to snow. It can go to mud, and it can go up to 8 inches of water. It can go over some roots and rocks, but obviously not a large log or a large tree that's fallen down over the road. But it has compared to not being able to go at all, it has quite an opportunity for people to go. I should mention that at least what we've done in Oregon, or what David Chair has done in Oregon, there are 2 different ways that they can access these chairs. One is what they're calling a fixed position chair, and those are chairs where we have arranged for a host, such as a veterans organization or a tourism organization, or to have a shed in their parking lot that has the chair located. The other is what they call a tow and go. This is where there's a trailer located at the host, and the host then allows them to pick it up and take it wherever they'd like to go. The way people use these chairs, or can access these chairs, is they go to davidchair.org. They sign up as either a fixed position or a tow and go chair for a 2-hour block for free. I believe with the tow and go chairs, they can also take a longer period of time. So if they want to take it away, for instance, people who are we've seen people who in the metro areas along the I-5 corridor who want to take it to the coast. It's going to take longer than 2 hours. But the point is that these are free, and the arrangement is quite interesting. That David's Chair handles the reservations, handles the liability waivers, the insurance, and the long-term maintenance, and then the host at each of these locations handles the checkout, the check-in, the cleaning, and the recharging and storage of the chairs.
So it's a true partnership between David's Chair and the host.
Yeah.
And then Oregon Parks Forever, you're the mostly the funding mechanism. I'm probably marketing as well, right? Trying to get the word out.
We are the funding mechanism for a lot of the chairs. And then we also assist with the David's Chair staff in finding hosts for these locations. And then, between their website and our website and the stories, we get the word out about these chairs. There's been, because they're such life-changing chairs, there's been a lot of press coverage about this. And for people who are interested in learning more, I would encourage people to go to davidchair.org, the website, and there's a button for pictures and videos, and click on the videos and watch the video called All Together for David's Chair. It's about a 3-minute video that shows you the different kinds of uses and people's reactions to using them. And you'll just see what I'm talking about. They're life-changing. For people who never thought they were going to be able to go on the beach again or on some of these trails. It's absolutely incredible.
Well, as David said earlier, I will put links to Oregon Parks Forever and to David's Chair. And if there's any other links you think we need to put up there, we'll put all those on our website. So yeah, people who either listen to this as a podcast or watch one of our videos on our webpage, we'll be able to get access to that link, so they don't have to remember it.
Yeah. Well, I think you certainly can get links to the various DNRs, the Department of Natural Resources, in the states that I listed, in terms of where they can use them, use the chairs in those various states.
So Seth, are there similar programs in other states? I know that nationally, are there similar arrangements where there's a no fee rental of these type of units across the country, or are they set up differently in different states?
They are set up differently in different states. As far as I know, there's no one who's charging for the use of them, but the rules are different in each state. For instance,
Okay.
in Georgia, there's a requirement that they have a disabled permit for parking in order to be able to use the chair, whereas no one, as I'm not aware of anybody else who has that sort kind of requirement.
Okay.
In some of the northern states, instead of having them scattered around the state for use, they come from a single location. They typically go for events, and so they'll host an event and they'll bring 5, 6, 10 chairs, for people to go to an event. As an example, in Michigan, I believe they have 26 chairs scattered around the state in various state parks. And then you go to the state park, and then they have different amounts of time and different rules as to what days of the week and that sort of thing the chairs are available.
So, in a situation like David's chair in Oregon, there is no requirement that you have to have some type of medical documentation of a disability mobility issue. You just have to sign up to utilize the chair.
That's correct. We say that the chair is available to anybody who has a mobility challenge, and that they don't have to be already in a wheelchair. So the mobility challenge, as I mentioned earlier, can be, people who are using a cane, crutches, scooters, walkers, or frankly, just people like me who are getting older, having just balance issues.
Well,
To be able.
are you a fly fisherman, Seth?
I'm not a fly fisherman, but I certainly would love to have a chair like that to be able to go fly.
So, how's this program being met by land managers? I know as a land manager when I was with the BLM and with the Corps of Engineers and with the National Park Service, I would have well, I shouldn't use that metaphor again, but I would have really embraced this program. I think it's spectacular to be able to enhance accessibility, and that's one of the directives, at least within the federal government, is to try and get people out on the landscape and to reconnect them with the landscape, to open areas up so that people can have access. That doesn't mean necessarily, and this is something Chris and I have talked about many times, that the fetish for the personal automobile, but this program is just spectacular. How are land managers in general, in your experience? How is this program being met? Are they really excited about it, or is there resistance?
I think some are very excited about it. There is concern about whether or not they're going to be damage to the trails, or whether their trails are ready for a chair like this. There are liability concerns that come up in terms of whether the say a footbridge has enough support to keep someone from falling off the bridge with the chair. And the laws are different in each state. In Oregon, we ran into some significant issues in terms of trying to put them in the state parks. And that's mainly because of this law called recreational immunity, which is a law that it's not been clear that the public land manager is not going to be held liable for damages that happen when they allow the public to use their lands. And so the state parks people have been very concerned about having the property be the host. In addition, they have just staffing issues they already have challenges for staffing. And so the question is, do they really want to have their staff doing the checkout, check-in, recharging, cleaning, et cetera? And so that's why it's worked out really well that we have found that these other kinds of organizations who are near the park locations to be the hosts. And so then the biggest challenge there is just making sure that they get a collection of volunteers who are available to do the checkout, training, check back in, the cleaning, and minor maintenance, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
that's interesting. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was actually going to ask another question, not specifically about Davis Chair, but you know, what first brought Oregon Parks Forever into the adaptive mobility space to begin with? Was it this program, or were you already, you know, working on accessibility and adaptive mobility issues before?
So our mission as an organization is to enhance the experience of using the public lands and the accessibility of the public lands. And so it's basically under the accessibility category that
Right.
David's chair fit into our mission. So we have a number of other programs that aren't specifically addressed to people with mobility challenges, but intended to get people, kids out. We have a program called Track Trails, nature scavenger hunts to get
Gotcha.
families
Yeah.
and kids unplugged and active outdoors. We have another program for high school students to get them out and learn how to consider careers in the outdoors during summer employment, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So Seth, I was going to inquire there a little bit about is there any information as far as you mentioned the concern about the impacts of the tracks and the vehicle on trails? And I know from my experience, and can back this up, there's been a lot of discussion going back and forth about something like e-bikes on trails because there's this concern about motorized vehicles on pedestrian trails. And the mountain biking community has voluminous literature documenting the minimal impacts of mountain bikes if they're used properly. And the same thing with the e-bikes, that it's a similar level of impact. Is there any information about uh, these action track vehicles that would help alleviate that concern on land managers?
I don't know that I've seen data in terms of impact on the trails themselves. I can tell you that I have not heard from any public land managers that there's been any concern that they're already out there with their four-wheel John Deere. I don't know, what are those called? The four-wheel things that they carry supplies around from the park staff. These things have no more impact on the trails than those, and I think that's that's an important thing. I think the distinction versus the e-bikes is because of the Americans with Disabilities Act. These chairs kind of get around whatever limitations there are based on e-bikes or motorized vehicles. These are an accommodation for getting in the land. And so we have not found a legal reason that these can't be used.
Right, right. And I would assume, if you're not going to have hundreds of these vehicles on a trail at any time. So, and that leads me to my next question. You indicated there's been a strong reception. What is the user demand? Have you seen a really strong demand for these vehicles across the state or across the nation? Is there any organized advocacy groups that are helping to promote this outside of the kind of relationship that Oregon Parks Forever has with the Davis Chair?
I'm not aware of anything nationally. I know that each state that's involved in this, the organizations are promoting it. There's a growing demand. In fact, Travel Oregon in Oregon has just recently given a grant to add 4 more chairs along the Oregon coast to the locations that are already showing that that a single chair is not enough. For example, Seaside has just been a really popular location, and now they're adding a second chair just to keep up with the demand there. But other than kind of all the press and all the word of mouth that's going out there, I'm not aware of anything.
All right. Well, let's see. I had a couple of maybe more personal questions, not for you personally, but just from your experience and what you've seen. And one of those was I thought, like, our listeners probably would like to hear something like this. If it's happened, have you seen any social or emotional impacts on visitors who haven't been able to access these landscapes that now can, that kind of, you know, puts the whole thing home, right? When you have that experience where this person wouldn't have this ability to have this experience without this. And how did they, yeah.
The best way for your viewers to see some of those stories is to look at the David Share Facebook page. The David Share
Yeah.
Facebook page has some absolutely incredible stories about the personal impacts of people who've been able to go on the beach for the first time in years. You know, it's really sad, and not being disabled myself, I wasn't aware of this, but prior to the access to this sort of thing, the only other ways that people had to get out onto the beach, for instance, was something called Moby mats. These are mats that the beach that the parks departments will roll out, and you can go out as far as the Moby mat goes, but that basically is the limitation. There were also fat tire wheelchairs, but fat tire wheelchairs are hard to push, especially if you get someone who's pretty heavy in a fat tire wheelchair, and so that again is a limitation. But prior to those improvements, people who had a mobility challenge, when their family went to the beach, they were left in the parking lot or up at the top to watch. Or
Right.
they were put on a blanket and carried down to the beach and put in place to stay all day, while the family played. And so to be able to see people who can get down onto the beach, have kids sit in their lap as they ride around, have them go back and forth as they wish across the beach, absolutely incredible. And again, if you go to some of the stories on David's Share, Feb's Facebook page, you'll see people just talking about how they hadn't been on the beach for 10, 15, 20 years, and they just never thought they were going to be able to go again. So it's just incredible.
Thank you for that, because I have a lot of experiences like that within my own family. One of the reasons why I push accessibility so much is I grew up around some individuals that we had to do that. We would have to carry them if we're doing a picnic somewhere. We would have to carry them in because the wheelchair wouldn't. We just couldn't get the wheelchair in,
Mm-hmm.
or it just happens, and it happens a lot. But when you're a family that deals with that sort of thing, you get used to it, and you know I could see how having um, a benefit like this of for their people, for themselves or whatever, could be just life altering.
Yep. Kind of going back to individual stories, I got personally interested in the David Share because of a woman who lives in the continuing care retirement facility my mother lives in. And there was a woman who lived, still lives 4 cottages away, who has been in a wheelchair for her whole life because she's a polio victim. And she started telling me the stories and how, she was disappointed that in her complex there are trails through the woods around the complex that she's never been able to go on. And that made me start looking into, what are the options? And that's when I found out about these Action Track chairs. And I just got so inspired to, oh my God, to
Right,
help
right.
people like her. It's just incredible.
Right,
No,
not to
that's
mention the impact that, going out into the woods or down a trail or just outside, can have on their mental well-being.
Oh yeah.
We have all kinds of, documented studies that show the benefit of the outdoors and nature and all this. And um it is a travesty a lot of times. And that's how I felt as a public land manager in the National Park Service whenever I ran up against opposition to increasing and access to an area, you know or to putting in a sidewalk and making sure that federal highways actually did their job and made it meet ABA and ADA. They weren't required to, so we'd have to fight for it
Mm-hmm.
as the Federal Land Management Agency. It's kind of ridiculous. Now we've taken a lot of steps over the last year. Before I got out, we actually forced federal highways to acknowledge that the ABA and the ADA apply to anything they build within the national parks
Oh,
uh, on front country. So roads, sidewalks, that sort of thing. So now that will be a lot less of a fight for, when NPS and BLM and other agencies do some front country either rehab or building new facilities or whatever. It'd be a lot less difficult to get that stuff done. But in the past, it was, well, there's a loophole because ADA doesn't apply to federal agencies, and the ABA, we really don't have to follow that, except for facilities. And roads aren't facilities, sidewalks aren't facilities. So we felt that was my biggest part of my job, I think, for the year before I left federal service was trying to get that done, and we got it done just a few months before I left. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping, you know, if we have more stuff like that happen, um, access to our public lands gets easier and easier. Hopefully.
Yeah, I've always been amazed that there's any resistance at all. And if you haven't seen it, there's a documentary that I'd recommend any of our listeners, or if you guys haven't seen it, it's called Crip Camp, and it's the story of a camp for people with disabilities, and it's back in the there's video from back in the 60s and 70s, and some of the people that went to that camp because of their experience at that camp were the impetus for the ADA Act, which it was just a really inspiring documentary. It's called again Crip Camp, it's funny and it's entertaining at the same time. It's really informative, but I'm always amazed that there's any resistance to this at all. Like I've joked before, like I don't understand why any land manager would have resistance to a tracked vehicle on the beach, unless of course they had a bad experience in Normandy or something. But it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, that's really what we've been, vested with that. What good is a park if you can't get people to access it? And that's where you lose your support in the long run. And your story, Seth, about what inspired you was the woman at the assisted care facility. And I applaud you for going the extra mile to look in um, and see what options were available, and then bringing this to Oregon Parks Forever, because as I mentioned at the outset, that's what sold me. That's what really sold me is that David's Chair program was just a spectacular no-brainer and really can have a dramatic impact and change people's lives. So congratulations on that. That's just phenomenal.
Thank you. As you were talking about concerns that public land managers might have, it occurs to me that one of the initial questions along the Oregon coast was how long the batteries lasted and how far someone could go on one of these chairs. And they were thinking about it from the perspective of, what if someone goes too far and the battery dies? How far is the park ranger going to have to go to recover them? And so the battery life is about 6 hours. And the biggest issue they've had in terms of the coast, the Oregon coast, has people who don't pay attention to the 8-inch limitation on the water and take the thing too far into the coast, or into the water, and then have to get towed out. Right. And so there are some limitations that have to be paid attention to by the public land managers. But so far there haven't been any significant issues. No one's been hurt by using these chairs. There's just been some inconveniences of people who don't pay attention to the rules.
Yeah, and that caveat that applies. I mean, I know from personal experience, I do that all the time. How far can I go before I'm going to get myself into trouble because I won't be able to get back? I mean, that applies across user groups. So I'm always making that mental calculation, and unfortunately, it becomes less and less as I get older and go, well, I better not go this far. That's a little bit, when I went to the Grand Canyon years ago, and they have all the signs in the Grand Canyon, don't hike down to the river and expect to get back up in the same day unless you're getting, medevaced. And I was really cautious about going down there until I met somebody that was in his 60s, and he goes, He goes all the way down to the river and up the other rim and back. And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, you could do it." And I had enough water and I planned ahead, but I was really cautious. And
That's
it's
the
the same
problem.
thing. What that
There's
most
your
people,
problem, Kevin. They
what's
don't
that?
plan. The number of people that head down into the
No,
canyon that
I
do not have a
understand. Yeah.
drop of water with them or a snack.
Yeah.
That's where,
Chris
yeah.
worked at the Grand Canyon, so he's aware of how many rescue attempts are done. But with the David's chair, it's the same kind of concept. It's you have to use common sense and be prudent about it, and realize how far you can go out or how deep you can go in the water. And but otherwise, it's just I can't see why a land manager would have any serious objection to embracing this wholeheartedly. I would, as a land manager, I would have really thought this was just phenomenal and would have promoted it as much as possible. Because as I
Wait,
said, there's a substantial proportion of the American public that have mobility issues, and of that proportion, I'm sure there's people like you described that would love the opportunity to get out there on the beach or go on those trails behind the assisted living facility and be able to do that independently. Just spectacular.
well, the other group of people that need to be complimented in making this possible is the volunteers who work at the host locations to make it possible for people to come and check out a chair, to check it back in, to learn how to use it, to do the minor cleaning that has to happen to get the sand or the dirt, the mud off the chair and get the thing recharged. And they're the people who kind of make it possible to keep going, because the park agencies are, as you guys know better than me, are really stressed with staff and all the demands on staff and the funding cuts they've had to deal with. So to be able to have volunteers who are available to make it possible to kind of allocate hours to make sure that people can use these shares, that's a wonderful community service.
So if
Oh,
someone
that's
is
great.
interested in volunteering, there's a sign up on David Chair website, or do they can they get in contact with you at Oregon Parks Forever? Or
That's an interesting question. No, we don't have anything. I mean, we certainly can put people in touch with David Chair, and they can put people in touch with the hosts. It's the volunteers are really coordinated by the hosts
okay,
at each location. So when each location signs on, they they agree to the responsibility for recruiting hosts or recruiting volunteers or staff to do that check out process.
so the first step would be to contact David's Chair and find out if there's a host chair in the vicinity to where they're available to volunteer, and if there's somewhere that would like to host a chair, can they go to either David's Chair or Oregon Parks Forever and put together an agreement?
Yes, they can. Uh, we don't often have the royal we, including David's chair, don't normally have chairs just sitting there kind of ready to go to new locations. But what it does is helps us come up with a list of places that are interested in having them, so that we can then go out and look for additional funding to get more chairs. And we do have pending applications for more locations. And as I indicated, we're trying to find places to put chairs along the I-5 corridor in Oregon. We'd also love to expand out into Eastern Oregon. If you go back to the beginning, David Hattrick was a outdoorsman and a hunter. And so one of the first uses of the chairs was people who wanted to take the chairs to hunting camp. And so as I understand it, they used to attach a trailer to the pickup truck and go out and spend a week hunting. And in fact, Action Track Chairs sells an attachment for the chairs that is a gun rest, so that people can actually go out
Wow.
and go hunting. So I think for bird hunting or for deer hunting or whatever, that would be much more popular, I think, out in Eastern Oregon or in southeastern Oregon. I'm
Right,
sorry,
right.
southwestern Oregon.
Yeah, I can think of one place in particular, we had a 10,000 acre wetland that was real popular duck hunting location near Klamath Lake in Southern Oregon. And something like this, because we would get people that would request e-bike utilization with a trailer behind it in order to access that exactly for what you're describing. People that were avid hunters but had some type of a cardiac issue or whatever that they couldn't make the trek into the wetland. And something like David's chair would have been a phenomenal asset to have something local that they could tow and go or something like that they could utilize. So yeah, that would be fantastic. And if someone's, because we have such a massive market for Under the Flat Hat, and we have listeners across the United States. We have actually a clustering of listeners in New Jersey. That's because that's where my family is. But if there's people outside of the great state of Oregon that are interested in this kind of program, if they were to reach out to you, would you have a list of contacts that within their area that they might be able to regionally look into as far as what's going on in different parts of the country?
Yes, I have a list of people that I know about in various states. Also, they can contact Action Track Manufacturing directly to find out who the distributors are for that area, and they would know about anything that maybe we don't know about. Most of what we know about are programs that are through various park foundations or park agencies. Right. But I think there are some situations that are outside of those groups that Action Track would know about.
Yeah, and I would strongly recommend anyone that's listening that's interested in this, like you mentioned, davidschair.org. They've got some excellent videos and testimonials and videos of how the chair operates and how to load people in the chair. And then Action Track also has a really good website that they show the actual construction and the history of how these chairs were developed. So I would strongly recommend anyone with an interest in learning more about it go visit those resources, and we'll put some links up.
Kevin, you mentioned action or loading a person into the chair, and that's an interest. Had not thought to mention that, but for your public land managers, they should know that one of the distinctions that we, and as far as I know, every other group that has organized this, is saying that the agency is not going to be responsible for transferring people from one chair to another, so that they need to bring a trained associate with them, someone who already works with them and transferring to know how, so that people don't get injured in moving from one chair to the next.
Right. Well, I really appreciate your coming on the show today, Seth. I think it's a spectacular program, and I really I applaud what you've done in terms of integrating it into Oregon Parks Forever, bringing it to the board and running with it. I shouldn't have used that metaphor again, but to advocating for it and developing it over the last several years. And I'm excited to be part of Oregon Parks Forever in a small way. And it was really what brought me, piqued my interest and brought me on board was that David's Chair program. So hopefully it continues to expand. I don't know if Chris, do you have any other questions for Seth? Anything else?
Well, I could probably ask him questions all day long, but I think we've covered the big questions that I had, and I wanted to, Seth, thank you for coming on. I know we're a huge podcast, but this has been really enlightening. I really, I'm really appreciative of what you and your team are doing, supporting David's Chair and getting these chairs out there to the people, in the field and all that. I think it's great. And if there's anything we can do to help, please feel free to let us know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to tell the story, and Kevin, we're enjoying having you on the board, and really appreciate your help in spreading this.
That's because I'm still new to the board. It's still the honeymoon phase. Give it time. Give it time, and you'll be putting me in one of those chairs and sending me into deep water. I know how it works.
Seth, that's why I have a mute button for him.
Yeah,
Well,
I have a longevity curve, and so there's only a certain amount of time before the board says, "What did he do?"
I'm hopeful that some of your viewers who are interested in public lands, maybe public land managers, whether they're federal, state, county, city, tribal, whatever, would get excited about this and want to spend some more time looking into this. Uh, y- yes, there's some effort in kind of putting together a structure that makes sense. I know that Steve First at David's Chair is willing to kind of be a consultant to people in other states about how to put together a structure that works and take the lessons that he's learned in Oregon so that they can be making these shares available in other states.
Yeah, and
Right.
kudos also to Steve at David's Chair for the work that he's done. I mean, it's just spectacular that he's taken the initiative that was generated through his Friends Challenge and taken it and produced a legacy that's affecting, hundreds and hundreds of people, if not more.
It's I, I'm so in awe of Steve. He's a full-time sergeant in the Medford Police Department, and he still manages to find the time to run this organization and do events on the weekends and run around the state helping people get started. It's just incredible.
All right. We hope to meet him one day. I don't know if we said this at the beginning, but Steve was actually supposed to be on the call today, but got called out for something, so he couldn't make it. So, maybe we'll, have you back, Seth, and bring Steve on and do a follow up. Um, see where things are, 6 months, a year out, and see what, where you think you need, where do you need your help? Is it in money, or is it in finding other host organizations, or what,
Yeah.
Because I know that changes. It changes over time depending on, you know, where you're at at any one time. So,
Okay. Super. Well, again, thank you very
all
much for
right.
including us.
All right. Well, that was a great talk. Seth is a great guy and had some, a lot of good information. I expected he would. He's executive director of a, statewide nonprofit. He's not some, you know, incompetent shill. So I knew he would have some good information for us and be able to, help answer some of our questions that, you know, other people probably couldn't. So I'm glad he was on. I am sad that Steve wasn't able to make it today. But like I said, maybe we can pull him on at another time.
Yeah, no, it's a tremendous program. I mean, it's so exciting, and if people get a chance to look at those videos, um, there's an emotional resonance to them because you can feel the sense of elation that people have when they can access these spectacular landscapes when they couldn't before.
Right.
It's just it's a joy to see that, and it's just a joy to be involved with an organization that has a program to help support that. And it's just it's something that I think is a really tremendous opportunity to really enhance the appreciation for and understanding of our public lands and create greater access without degrading the public lands, as we've discussed in the past. The fetish for the personal automobile on public lands has caused all kinds of negative impacts to the resources and to the user experience. But something like a David's chair, enhanced mobility for people that don't have don't have the full capacity to get to some locations, that's that's not an unreasonable thing, and I think it's just an exciting thing to be a part of. So hopefully our little um, input will help spread the word a bit across the country. If we have 6 listeners today, maybe I don't know, maybe.
Well, I hope, some NPS people, are watching us either out of spite to watch us try to fail, or they're actually friends of ours and are supporting us. We'll take them all. Hate me if you want. I don't care. Um, but I hope they'll take some of this to heart and be like, this could be one of those
Yep.
programs that are easy to implement, or we'll find a way through. Because being a partnership and agreements person, right? In the federal, there are ways to do it. There are
Right.
ways to do it and keep it
Exactly.
from falling as a burden on the staff, right? Because that's going to
Exactly.
be the biggest hiccup with probably with state parks as well as federal lands. It's oh, we can't manage that. Well, maybe you don't have to. You get a
Exactly. And
got
this
a
is
good
this is
conservancy or friends group, or if you
right.
need to form a friends group, these
Right.
are all things that are doable, right?
Yeah.
And you have them push that programming and house the chairs and take care of them and have it there for people to be able to take that trail or whatever. It's all totally really doable, and it shouldn't just stop with Davis chair either. There's all kinds of different type of adaptive mobility. um, I hate using the word, I don't like using the word vehicle, because vehicle actually moves it out of ADA into something else. Right? But some type of mobility conveyance, if
Yeah,
you
these are
will.
reasonable
And
accommodations, and there,
yeah.
yeah, there's nothing that should preclude people from embracing it. As far as land managers, may not be suitable for all circumstances because there
Well,
could
there's still
like,
common sense, right? I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. But that's the same for even people that don't have any mobility issues. There's
right.
areas like, this is off limits to camping, or no, do not do that because you will get yourself hurt and we will have to rescue you and then you're going to bear the cost. But in general, like you're saying, this is a seamless type thing where the land manager, and there is a lot of reluctance. There's this general inertia that you see on a regular basis with managers in general, that they don't want to undertake any new initiatives because they're risk
Hmm.
adverse. But this is something where the risk has been, or not the risk, but I should say the infrastructure is in place, and all you have to do
Hmm.
is embrace it and sign off on it, and the rest of the
Yeah, you could
logistics
force,
are already handled.
most of the risk, with something like this comes from the liability, right?
Right.
Liability for the person, um, and the actions they take, the liability for the equipment, um, and that's being borne by either the individual or by uh, the volunteer group that's housing the units. Now, this may be different in different states, but from my perspective, I see it as a way that you can partner with a local group and David's chair, some type of three-way partnership thing going on, and then uh, the park could even help pay for them.
Right.
Depending on how you set up that agreement. And you know, when most managers are more worried, they're not as worried about money usually in some of these cases than they are about liability and impact on staff, right?
Exactly.
And so if you could eliminate the impact on staff and eliminate the liability portion, and then maybe the feds can actually help fund some of these things. Maybe a local
Right.
park can. If
And the and
not,
the
have a friends group raise the money for it.
Yeah, and the
You know,
resource damage, I mean, this is not going to open the floodgates to hundreds of people showing up with David's chairs. Uh,
well, here's the
you know,
thing with resource damage, as the amount of here's another topic, right? Visitation in the parks and the increase in visitation. When you have 3 people traveling a trail a day versus 30,000, there are impacts to that trail.
and that's
And no
my
matter
point,
what
is that
trail we've got, around
these
the
did,
country right now, it doesn't matter if it's a bike, pair of shoes, pair of hiking boots, David's chair, whatever. When you have that many people, that's where the impact comes from. It's not from
yeah,
any one conveyance.
no, and my point being that you are not going to see a sudden flood of these tracked vehicles on those
No.
trails. So the impact is minimal to non-existent compared to, as you said, the impact from all the other utilization of trails or facilities.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
not even an issue. But I know that like right now, David's chair has a limitation 6 hours on the battery, and I can feel my battery starting to run down now. So I gotta get back on the trailer and get 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 my battery recharged. But I think this was a really great topic to discuss, and maybe in the future we can have either Steve, the director of David's chair on, or have Seth back on to talk more about some of the other things that Oregon Parks Forever is getting involved in. But I think this is a great topic. I enjoyed
I do too.
have an
Thanks for
opportunity to
setting
talk
this up,
about it.
Kevin. Yeah, I think this was great. I'd like to have more things like this. And I don't know if you noticed, I made it through the entire call without cussing.
Yeah, this if you noticed, I was very
Wow.
serious. I was very serious
Wow.
on this episode, so I have to decompress now because I had to put on my serious demeanor, and that takes a lot of energy for me to
Right?
maintain it. But I'm so positive about. There's not a lot of stuff in life that you can just go, oh, I'm 100% for this. This is great.
Right.
This program, um, I'm 100% behind. I think it's an exciting thing to be a part of, and it's just phenomenal. So, uh, appreciate you getting participating in this discussion, and hopefully we can make a little bit of a difference.
All right. Well, we'll call it a day on that. And for our listeners, thank you for sitting in and listening to us chat with Seth and with each other. And please like, share, our videos, our podcasts. You can find out more you can find this video for one and the audio at www.elburno.com underneath the studios tab under the flat hat. And we'll also put in links to David's chair, Oregon Parks Forever. I want that link to the documentary you're talking about, Kevin.
Yeah,
We'll
Crip Camp.
Crip Camp. I'll throw those on the webpage. So there's one place you can get that. And yeah. So thanks a lot. That's about it. That's our show for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Chris Burnett, joined as always by my good friend, Kevin Healy, a refugee from New Jersey, the landfill of opportunity. And to you, our listeners, thank you for sharing part of your day with us. We couldn't do it without you. You can find our merchandise, podcast notes, and other fun stuff at www.elburno.com. Elburno is proudly owned and operated by current and former National Park Service Rangers, and every purchase helps support Rangers and their families. A special thanks to our whole team, especially our production crew. This episode, like all the others, was brought to life by our executive producer and all-around wizard, Elise Burnett. We definitely couldn't do this without her. You can also find more about our work and bios at www.elburno.com. Before we close, just a quick reminder, nothing in this podcast should be taken as legal advice. If you need legal guidance, please consult an attorney licensed in your jurisdiction. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It helps more people find the show and join the conversation. This podcast, along with all related merchandise, is a production of Elburno Studios, a division of Elburno Productions, Ltd.